how goods to one another. Let's say it's a house, let's say it's land, let's say it's actual products. When would those products actually be transferred from the owner to the buyer? We spoke about that in depth as well. And then we started on riba and the types of riba. So inshallah ta'ala today we're going to restart from where we left off, which was the chapter of al-riba, faslun, al-riba. Yasin, faddal, if you want to read.
Bismillah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. قال المؤلف رحمه الله الربا نوعان ربا فضل وربا نسيئة.
The author rahimahullah ta'ala, he starts off by saying what? Riba naw'an. He says riba is of two types. There's two types of riba. Fadl.
ربا فضل وربا نسيئة.
He mentions the first type, which is known as riba fadlin, and the second type, which is known as riba nasi'ati. Riba fadlin, in the Arabic language, you could also say. So the first type of riba is the riba of increase. And a very simple scenario to make you understand what I'm saying is, let's say I was selling you £15 and in return you gave me £10. Or to make it a bit easier, let's say I sold you 10 grams worth of gold for 15 grams worth of gold. Even though it could be the case that the 10 grams worth of gold that I have inherently might have more value. But I'm selling you 10 grams for 15 grams. So in this scenario, what do we have? We have riba fadlin, because there is an increase in the transaction. Even though it's the same product, the buyer is giving more than the seller. Is everybody with me? So this is an example of riba fadl. An example of riba nasi'a in the Arabic language, nasi'a comes from at-ta'khir or at-ta'jeel, which is to delay. So it's the riba of delaying. And an example of the riba of delaying would be, let's say you want to exchange currencies. So a very simple example would be exchanging currencies. If I have £15 in cash and another person has $20 in cash, and we want to exchange £15 for $20. If the person gives me the £15 and I say to him, I'll give you the $20 tomorrow, this would be considered riba. Why would it be considered riba? Not because the amounts are different. Because it's not a condition for the amounts to be same when you're doing currency exchange. But what you have to do is you have to do the exchange right there and then. And if it doesn't happen right there and then the riba of al-ta'khir or the riba of nasi'a takes place, which is the riba of delay. We're going to go into the details of when riba nasi'a occurs, the riba of delay, and we're going to go into details regarding when riba al-fadl occurs. At the moment it might all seem jumbled up in your mind, because it depends on the products that are being sold and the products that are being bought. So we're going to go into all of that in depth, inshallah ta'ala. So nobody needs to worry. Fadl.
فربا الفضل يحرم في كل مكيل وموزون بيع بجنسه متفاضلا.
So the author rahimahullah ta'ala, he starts off by talking about riba al-fadl. What was riba al-fadl again? The riba of increase. He says يحرم في كل مكيل وموزون بيع بجنسه. It is haram in every single thing that is makil, which I'm going to explain in a second, and everything that is mawzoon, which I'm going to explain in a second. Bi'a bi jinsihi, that has been sold in its type, mutafadilan, at different amounts. So what is the author talking about over here? He first off talks about things that are known as makil and things that are known as mawzoon. Makil is a measurement that measures volume in the Arabic language. So it's a measurement of size. If we have, for example, a bottle, and this bottle is filled up to 500 milliliters, we would say milliliters is volume, right? But let's say we weighed that bottle and it weighed 500 grams, then that would be different to the volume. The volume in today's time, we use milliliters and liters and other metrics to measure volume. And then we have metrics that we use to measure weight, such as tons, such as kilograms, such as pounds, and so on and so forth. Is everybody with me? So when we say makil, we're talking about a product that is measured in volume. And when we say mawzoon, we're talking about a product that we measure in weight. So this is the difference between the two of them. And there were products during the Prophet ﷺ time that were measured in volume when they're being sold. And there were certain products that were measured in weight when they were being sold. So there has to be a differentiation made between these two types of products. And this is important when you're learning the chapter of riba. So the author, he says, every single thing that is makheel, that is measured in volume, and every single thing that is mawzoon, that is measured in weight, bi'a bi jinsihi, that is sold with something that has the same type as it, mutafadilan, at different amounts, is considered to be riba al-fadl. So let's give some examples to make it easy to understand. First of all, when the author says bi jinsihi, by its type, what do we mean? If I say to you right now, we have barley. Barley is something that is measured in makheel. It's measured by volume. It's not measured by weight. Another example of something that is measured by volume, but it used to be measured by volume during the time of the Prophet, even though today it's measured in weight, are dates. Dates used to be measured in the Prophet ﷺ's time by using makheel, by using volume. Does anybody know any of the metrics that was used during the Prophet ﷺ's time for volume? You find this in some of the ahadith. You could say qullatan, but that's not the one that I'm referring to. One that's sa'. What is a sa'?
It's like a bag full.
Has anybody had? Yeah, you're almost there, but
like a sack, I think, like a.
No, I want you to be more specific.
It's like a jar.
It's not a jar. It is.
A scoop.
The companions of the Prophet ﷺ, if you couldn't be equivalent to something that they give that is the size of a mud, because of how virtuous they are and things of that nature. So these are certain examples of the metrics that was used for volume. So tamr in that time, it was used as something that was measured in volume and not something that was measured in weight. Even though today you go to Medina, you'll find them measuring it in weight. So the author, he says, the types have to also be the same for it to be riba al-fadl. So what is the type? Dates is a type of food. Barley is another type of food. Wheat is another type of food. Each one of these types that I've mentioned, the way that they are measured is by a volume and not by a weight during the Prophet's time. Is everybody with me? But there are different types. So what the author is saying is riba al-fadl, there has to be two things that have to meet in the transaction. The thing that is being sold and the thing that is that the buyer is receiving in return, they both have to be from the same type. So if, for example, if it was dates, both sides would have to be dates. And the second condition that needs to be met is that they both have to be either measured in volume or measured in weight. Is everybody with me? So dates, let's say I'm sending you this volume of dates, which is, let's just say it is 10 woods, 10 handfuls. And you're giving me back in return 10 handfuls of dates as well, but they're different types of dates. I might have some dates that were planted in Medina, you might be bringing me dates that have been planted in Sham, but they're exactly the same amount. And as we just affirmed a minute ago, we said that dates, they were measured in volume. So if you was to give me the 10 handfuls of your dates and I was to give you in return the 10 handfuls of my date, this would be considered to be a good transaction. However, let's say I gave you 11 handfuls of my dates and you gave me 10 handfuls of your dates. This would be considered to be riba al-fadl. Why is it riba al-fadl? Because two conditions have been met. Condition number one, they are both considered to be a product that is measured by volume. Condition number one. That condition could have also been if the products that we're exchanging are products that are both measured by weight. The first condition would have still been met. So that's the first condition. The second condition is the two products are the same type. They're both dates. Even though they're different types of dates, a date is considered one type of product. If it was the case now that I was selling Yusuf 10 handfuls of sha'ir, which is barley, and he was giving me 10 handfuls of dates, in this scenario would be different. Why? Riba al-fadl wouldn't be present in this case. So I could, in this scenario, give him 11 handfuls of barley in replace of 10 handfuls of dates. Why? Because the two conditions aren't present. Only one of them is present. Which one's present?
The volume.
The volume. But which one's missing? The type. And because the type is missing, we say that I can sell him an amount that is more than I will receive. Is everybody with me? So riba al-fadl, those two conditions need to be met. And then it will be riba al-fadl. Sorry, those two conditions need to be met for it not to be riba al-fadl, for it to be a feasible transaction that is allowed. If those two conditions aren't met, it will be a transaction that has riba in it. Is everybody with me? No, I'll explain that better. I think I'm saying it the wrong way. Those two conditions, when they are met, yeah, I'm not saying it the right way. When those two conditions are met, everybody with me? When those two conditions are met, two things have to happen. Yeah, I didn't say this. The first thing is, the transaction has to be there and then. You cannot do any delay. Is that clear? So for example, the 10 handfuls of dates that I'm giving to Yusuf and he's giving me 10 in return, we can't say, right, I'm going to give you the 10 now, you give me the 10 tomorrow. This is the transaction. If he does that, what happens? Riba enters. Nor can he also give me an amount that is more than I'm giving him. So there has to be tamathul, which is equivalency in the portion size, and there has to also be a taqabud, which is the transaction or the giving or the transferring of the products happening right there and then. If any of them are missing, then it becomes riba. Just everybody with me? So riba al-fadl, two conditions need to be there. What's the first condition? Condition number one, there has to be the same type of product. Condition number two, the volume needs to be the same. If it is the case that the volume is not the same, it is riba. And if it is the case that the transaction doesn't happen at this, the transfer of the product doesn't happen there and then, it becomes riba. Now, what is the difference between the two of them? If the transferring of the products doesn't happen immediately and it happens in a delayed fashion, it becomes riba and nasi. Riba which one? And nasi, the riba of delayment. However, if the volume that he's giving me and the volume that I'm giving him, they don't match, it becomes riba al-fadl, the riba increase. Is everybody with me? Then the fadl.
ولو يسيرا لا يتأتى.
Then the author, he says, وَلَوْ يَسِيرًا لَا يَتَأَتَّى. So what does he mean by وَلَوْ يَسِيرًا لَا يَتَأَتَّى? He says, even if it is small, he's talking about the product that is either weighed or the product that is either measured in volume. Even if he's saying it is small, so لَا يَتَأَتَّى كَيْلُ. So it is not possible to really measure it in volume or measure it in weight. And this would be the example of, let's say for example, we've got one date or two dates. If the dates are so small in number, you wouldn't even measure them in weight, or you wouldn't even measure them in volume, because it might be too small to even do that. Let's say it was, a few grains of wheat or whatever the case may be. Then in that scenario, even though it's not possible for you to measure it in that way, because people might have not had the tools at the time to measure small things, it would still be the same, in the sense that the size has to be the same, and the transaction has to happen there and then, and the transferring of the products has to happen there and then. So even if it's small, it doesn't change the fact that riba will occur if what we're transferring to one another isn't exactly the same. Now,
ويصح به متساويا.
and the author rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, وَيَصِحُ بِهِ مُتَسَاوِيًا, and it is an authentic transaction, a transaction that is completely halal if the products that are being exchanged are equivalent in size and amount. Now,
وبغيره مطلقا في شرط قبل نفره.
Then the author rahimahullah ta'ala, he says وبغيره مطلقا. So he's saying right now, if the types are different, like the example that I gave you when I've got barley, which is measured in size or measured in volume, and he has dates which is measured in volume. If the types are different, however, the condition of the way that it is measured is the same, he said it doesn't matter if the sizes are different. The sizes can be different. So for example, I can sell him 20 handfuls of barley in exchange of 10 handfuls of dates. Another example that would be easier to even process
Can you repeat that again?
I could sell you 20 handfuls of barley, or let's just say wheat might be easier to use, 20 handfuls of wheat in exchange of 10 handfuls of dates. That would be a feasible transaction. Why? Because the types are the same. Another example would be, I could sell you 10 grams of gold in exchange of 20 grams of silver. Why? Because they are different types. Silver is a type and gold is a type. These are different types. And there's a hadith that talks about the different 6 types of wealth that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that are considered to be from the asnaf al-ribawiyya, the types of wealth that riba falls into. From the ones that he's mentioned, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, was he mentioned dhahab, gold by gold. So gold is one of the ones. He mentioned silver. He mentioned milh, salt. He mentioned sha'ir, which was barley. He mentioned what was the bur, wheat. He's also mentioned, the 6th one was, he mentioned tamr. He mentioned all of these 6 types. What the author is saying over here though is, as the scholars they say it's not restricted to these 6 types that I've been mentioning, but something known as a qiyas takes place, which is an analogy as to other food products that are similar to it. And the author's already mentioned how he does that by mentioning something is makeel if it's weighed, or if it is if it's weighed, or if it is measured in volume. So the author says, when بغيره مطلقة, he says if the types are different, it doesn't matter if the amount is the same or not. بشرط قبض قبل تفرق, as long as the condition of the 2 products being transferred right there and then takes place before the 2 people leave. قبل تفرق.
Sure. What is barley?
It's a type of, just search on Google Images, inshallah. طيب. You probably eat it at all. Probably.
لا مكيل بجنسه وزن ولا عكسه.
The author, he says, لا مكيل بجنسه وزنا ولا عكسه. What isn't allowed is to sell مكيل بجنسه وزنا. Makeel, as we mentioned, is something that is measured in volume. Let's say we have right now dates. We said in the Prophet's time it was measured what? In volume. And I said 10 handfuls for 10 handfuls. That's the transaction that I mentioned. This transaction, let's say the people at that time said, you know what? We're not going to measure it in volume. But rather what we're going to do is we're going to measure it in weight. And we're going to do the transaction that way. So let's say we did it in the Prophet ﷺ's time. You have Yusuf over here, and you have me over here. We decide that we're going to exchange dates. But the dates that we're going to exchange, we're not going to exchange them based on the volume of the dates, but rather we are going to exchange them based on what? The weight of the dates. The author says, لا مكيل بجنسه وزنا. You cannot exchange something that is measured in makeel, measured by volume, by doing it by weight. So you would not be allowed to do this. ولا عكسه, and it is not possible for a person to sell something that is measured in weight and then actually sell it by measuring it in volume. So both things are not allowed. Now,
إلا إذا علم تساويهما في المعيار الشرعي.
except if it is known that the 2 products are equivalent في المعيار, by using the ضابط or using the principle of the Sharia. And what is the principle? The principle is very simple. You basically weigh in volume what is weighed in volume, and you weigh in weight. Sorry, you measure in volume what is measured in volume, and you measure in weight what is measured in weight. It's as simple as that. Now,
وربا النسيء يحرم فيما اتفق في علة ربا فضل كمكيل بمكيل وموزون بموزون مثال.
okay, before we move on, I did a bad job in mentioning things that are meant during the Prophet's time that were weighed and things that were measured in volume. So let's give a few examples. I gave the examples of things that were measured in volume. From them was dates. From them was sha'ir, which was bur. Sha'ir. And from them was bur. We mentioned all three of them. Also salt. And anything that is liquid is usually measured in volume as well. So for example, oils, this will all be measured in volume. From the examples that were measured in weight during the Prophet's time was al-hadith, which is a type of metal, al-dhahab, which is gold, al-fidda, which is silver, meat, which you all know what meat is, and so on and so forth. These are just some of the examples to get an understanding. And the author, he moves on to riba al-nisiya, which is the riba of delaying. He says, يحرم فيما اتفق في علة الربا فضل. He says it is haram in that which the illah of riba fadl is present. كمكيل بمكيل وموزون بموزون نساء. Such as something that is sold in volume with something else that is sold in volume. And such as something that is sold in weight in exchange of something else that is sold in weight, nesa'an, by delaying the sale, by delaying the transferring of the products. So in short, what the author rahimahullah ta'ala saying, he's mentioned, remember the conditions that I mentioned for the riba al-fadl. I mentioned that first of all, it has to be the case that they are the same type. And I said that they also have to, what did I say? Same volume or the same weight. These are the two things that I mentioned. Remember, if they are the same product, automatically that would mean if they were measured by volume or measured by weight, that they would have the same measurements anyway. Does that make sense? Now, the author is saying the illah, which is in the English language you could say it's the reasoning behind the ruling. So we have something known as illah in the Sharia. So there's something known as qiyas. Have you ever, you all know what qiyas is, right? Yeah. In the Sharia we have masadir al-talaqi, which are sources that we take our knowledge from. So for example, we have the Quran, we have the Sunnah, which is all agreed upon. Anything from the Quran and the Sunnah is considered Islamic sources where we take our religion from. We also have something known as ijma', which is scholarly consensus. If the ulama of a particular time all agree on a particular ruling, then this shows this is an evidence. And there's a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ says, لا تجتمع أمتي على ضلالة, that my ummah don't come together upon something that is misguidance. There's also the evidences for it. The fourth thing that we take our religion from or source is known as qiyas. And qiyas is analogy. So when an analogy is occurring between two different things, there is something known as an illah. And the illah is the reasoning behind why that thing has been made haram, or that thing has been made halal, and so on and so forth. So let's say, for example, we have alcohol. Why is alcohol haram? The reason why it's haram, the illah, we know it is actually mentioned in the hadith, because it is muskir, it causes you to become intoxicated. So therefore, using that illah, which is the reasoning behind why it becomes haram, we can then do an analogy on anything that causes a person to become intoxicated and then say, it takes the same ruling. Such as, for example, smoking cannabis, or cocaine, or heroin, and so on and so forth. So the author over here, when he's talking about the illah of riba al-fadl, he's mentioning the reasoning behind why riba al-fadl is what makes something riba al-fadl. So the reason that he mentioned was, if the two types, well, if it is the case that the way that the two things that are being exchanged are measured in the same way, either by volume or either by weight, that is the first one. And the second is, he mentioned that they are the same product. So the author, rahimahullah ta'ala, over here, he says, riba al-nisiya, it has the same illah in one sense. In what sense? In the sense that both of the products that are being exchanged are either weighed or either measured by volume. But the second illah that we mentioned earlier, which is that the types have to be the same, isn't present for the riba al-nisiya. It's only present for the riba al-fadl. Is everybody with me, by the way? Now, so then he says, كَمَكِيلٍ مِكِيوَ مَوْزُونٍ نَسَاءً. I'll give you some examples just to make it very easier. If I had gold and silver, I've got 20 grams of gold, you have 50 grams of silver. I want the 50 grams of silver, you want the 20 grams of gold. If we decide that, let's say you say to me, no, I want you say to me, I want 40 grams of gold instead of the 20 grams of gold for the 50 grams of silver. Can we make that, can we come to that agreement?
Yes.
Yes. What about if, let's go a bit crazy now. Let's say we have 20 grams of gold and 1,000 grams of silver. Can we exchange 20 grams of gold for 1,000 grams of silver?
No.
People are saying no, right?
No.
So people are saying yes. You can. Why can you? Because these are different types. Gold is a different type to silver. So when you are buying gold using silver, all that needs to happen is taqabud. And that taqabud is that the two products are exchanged there and then, hand by hand. But the amounts don't have to be the same. And different currencies that we have today, such as pounds and dollars and Japanese yen, or for example shillings, or whatever the case may be, these are equivalent to gold and silver during the Prophet ﷺ's time. So therefore, if you go and you want to exchange £20 for $30, you can do that. And you can also exchange £20 for $500. Even though that would be a very stupid thing for you to do, but you can do that. So, and why can you do that? Because the types are different. However, the way that they are measured is the same. Now,
إلا أن يكون الثمن أحد النقدين يصح.
then the author rahimahullah ta'ala says, إلا أن يكون الثمن أحد النقدين فيصح. Except if إلا أن يكون الثمن أحد النقدين فيصح. Except in one scenario. And this is the scenario that one of the products, so when there's an exchange, there's two products being exchanged, right? If one of the products being exchanged is gold, or one of the products being exchanged is silver. Remember, I didn't say if one product is gold and the other product is silver. We're saying if one product is gold that is being exchanged and the other one is something else, or one product is silver and the other one is something else. And remember, we're not talking about gold and silver. Gold with something that isn't silver and something that isn't gold, or silver with something that isn't gold and something that isn't silver. Is everybody with me? So the examples that we're not talking about, just to make it clear to you, is if somebody has 20 grams of gold and another person has 50 grams of silver. We're not talking about that. We're not talking about also somebody exchanging gold for gold or silver for silver. We're talking about gold being exchanged for anything that isn't gold and silver. So let's say we're exchanging gold for something else that is weighed. Such as, quick example, we've got metals or meat or whatever the case may be. He's saying then it is allowed and there is no riba. So he's made a differentiation over here. What is the differentiation? So I'm going to tell you two principles that they use in the Hanbali method. Principle number one is, they say لا يباع المكيل بمكيل آخر من غير جنسه إلا بالتقابل. It is not possible for a person to sell something that is measured in volume in exchange of something else that is measured in volume. من غير جنسه, by a product, and whilst the two products that are being exchanged aren't from the same type, except that a taqabud happens, which is that the two products are exchanged there and then and they're not delayed. Did everybody understand that?
Just repeat it once.
It is not possible for somebody to sell something that is measured in volume in exchange of something else that is measured in volume. So we'll give you a quick example to make it easier. We've got, as we mentioned, for example, sha'ir, which is, or tamr, even easier, dates, which they were measured in volume during the Prophet ﷺ time. So it is not allowed for somebody to sell in volume, to sell something that is measured in volume in exchange of something else that is measured in volume, min ghayri jinsi, that isn't, and they don't have the same type. So it would be, for example, dates in exchange for barley. إلا بالتقابل, except that taqabul takes place, which is the two products are exchanged there and then in the gathering. And the exchange doesn't happen in a way where one is delayed and the other one is received. Clear? That is a principle. Principle number two. Very similar, but very different. لا يباع موزون بموزون. something that is weighed, first we spoke about something that is measured in volume, something that is weighed, it is not allowed to you for you to sell it in exchange of something else that is weighed, whilst the two products don't have the same type, such as, let's just say let's say copper, which is a type of metal, right? For something else that is measured in weight, such as meat or such as steel. They have different types, but they're both measured. إِلَّا بِالتَّقَابُضِ, except whilst the two products are exchanged there and then and one isn't delayed. Is there a belief? That principle clear? This principle now also has a little bit extra. Why? Because what did we say about gold and silver? We said gold and silver are measured in weight. So the author says, إِلَّا إِذَا, so I mean the ulama they say, إِلَّا إِذَا كَانَ أَحَدُهُمَا ذَهَبًا أَوْ فِضَّةً, except if the two things that are being weighed, that are being exchanged for one another, one of them is gold or one of them is silver. So if one side is gold and the other side is a normal product that is being weighed, that isn't gold or silver, or one side is silver and the other side is another thing that is being weighed, that isn't gold or silver, this is the only scenario where we would say it does not matter if you delay it or not. So just to make it easy for you right now, let's give a few examples to see if you've understood the chapter. We've got, I have 10 grams of gold. You have 10 kilos of chicken. I say to you, I'm going to pay you the 10 grams of gold, so they're both weighed, right? The grams are weighed, 15 kilograms is weighed, both measurements. I say to you, I want to buy 15 grams of gold for 15 kilos of chicken. You say to me, okay, let's do this. I say to you, I'm going to give you the money tomorrow, can you give me the chicken right now? Is this allowed, based on what we've learned so far?
No.
Okay, you said no. You said no. What about you?
Yeah.
What about you? You're not too sure.
Not sure.
What about you?
No.
Okay. Anybody say yes, apart from Yusuf?
Yeah.
He says yes as well. Okay, we'll start with the no's and then we'll go to the yes. Why did you say no?
Because it's a delayed transaction, I believe.
Okay, so that's the reason why you both said it. Why did you say yes?
So I don't have
You don't have a reason. It's actually yes. Why is it yes? Because I mentioned in the principle that if both products are considered to be weighed products, and one side is gold or silver, then none of this applies. So in this transaction, what do we have? We have me, I've got gold. He has chicken. They are both weighed. There is only one scenario whereby it isn't considered, that riba doesn't apply. And that is if one of the two people involved in the transaction is using gold to purchase another thing that is weighed, that isn't gold or silver. Is everybody with me? Do you understand that?
Yeah.
So therefore, it wouldn't be, you can do it, you can delay it, and there's no harm. However, make it easy, let's say I had metal, let's say I had copper, 15 kilograms of copper, and you have 100 kilograms of chicken. And then I came to you in the same scenario and I said, let's exchange this, but I'm going to give you the copper tomorrow, and you give me the chicken right now. Would that be allowed?
No.
No. Okay, let's change it around again. Let's say I have 15 kilograms of copper. You have 100 grams of silver. And then you say to me, I'll give you the silver tomorrow, give me the copper right now. Would that be allowed? Yes. Why would it be allowed? Because one side is silver or gold. And the reason why they're saying that, just so you understand, is because silver and gold in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, that was the currency that they would use to buy things. So therefore they've been treated differently to the other things that have been weighed. Or else it would be very difficult to buy things. Does that make sense? No. Follow.
ويصح بيع مكيل بموزون وعكسه مطلقا.
And he said something now, the author says, and it is allowed for a person to sell something that is measured in volume in exchange for something that is measured in weight. Mutlaqa in all scenarios. What does that mean? That none of these conditions apply. If we're talking about something that is measured in weight and something that is measured in volume. Remember the conditions that we placed before. If we're selling something that is measured in volume in exchange of something else that was measured in volume, then it becomes a must that we exchange right there and then. If we add the other condition on, which is that which we are selling, that is measured in volume, and we're doing in exchange of something else that is measured in volume, and we add to that as well that they are at the same time, we have to then have the same amount of the product, and the exchange has to happen there and then. Is everybody with me? Now, what about if it's the case that I am exchanging something that is measured in volume for something that is measured in weight? So to make it easy, let's say I've got barley, which is measured in volume, and I'm exchanging it for meat, which is measured in weight. Is it the case now that I can receive one of the products now and I can give the other product later on to the other person, so the two products are not exchanged right there and then? Is that allowed?
Yes.
Yes, it's allowed. Because we can do this exchange without any conditions. Because they don't meet in one of the conditions, which is they're not measured in the same way. Now, and what is similar to that as well is something that is measured in weight in exchange of something that isn't measured in weight. Whether it is measured via counting it, or whether it's measured via, like we just mentioned a minute ago, via volume, or whatever the case may be. Or something that is measured in volume against something else. No.
وصرف ذهب بفضة وعكسه لكن إذا افترق المتصارفان بطل العقد فيما لم يقبض.
So the author then he says وصرف ذهب بفضة وعكسه. He says وصرف ذهب بفضة وعكسه لكن إذا افترق متصارفان. He says if you want to exchange, he's talking about money exchange now. If you want to exchange gold for silver, or silver for gold, however, it is the case that the two people exchanging have left the gambling. بطل العقد فيما لم يقبض. The transaction has become nullified for that which wasn't taken by hand right there and then. So how is this possible? I'm going to give you a quick scenario. Let's say we have 20 grams, I have 20 grams of gold. You have 100 grams of silver. We agree that I'm going to give you 20 grams of gold, and then you're going to give me what? 100 grams of silver in return. But then you don't have the full 100 grams. You have 50 grams in it. But the deal was what? 20 for 100. So then you give me 50, and I give you 20, and then we walk out the room. What happens in that scenario? What happens in that scenario is 10 grams that I've given you for that 50 is a legitimate sale. But the remaining 50 that you never had, and the 10 that I've given you, that is a nullified sale. Because we said from the conditions for a sale to be valid is something known as a taqabud, which is the exchange of the two products happening there and then. Now, so I'm going to end it on one more thing, inshallah ta'ala. I'm going to mention one last thing and then we'll end it there, because I know it's need extra time. Which is, just to summarize what we've taken. We've taken, based on the Hanbali madhab, what the illah is. So the Prophet I mentioned in the hadith, he talks about the things that are considered to be ribawiyya, the products that are considered to be products of riba. Most products aren't considered to be products of riba. For example, this tissue paper, if I was selling it, it's not something that we measure in weight. For example, if you go to the shop and you buy a pen, it's not measured in weight, nor is it measured in volume. So all of these products, this bottle, generally speaking, no, this bottle is actually measured in volume. All of these things wouldn't be considered in that scenario. So, can we do it in 2 minutes? I'm just going to finish this off, inshallah.
Okay.
Okay, 15 minutes. So what I was saying was, the author, rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentions the scenarios, starting off with, I've kind of lost the flow there, but he mentioned, yes, he mentioned something that is weighed, and I said a lot of things aren't weighed, such as pens, such as, let's say this stove. Is the stove weighed when you're buying it? Is it measured in volume? No. So all of these things that aren't weighed or aren't measured in volume, they're not considered to be things that in a transaction would ever have riba in it. Is that clear? Now that we've understood that, how did the author come to this conclusion? The hadith doesn't say this. The hadith of the Prophet only mentions 6 things, 6 types of things. Salt, bur, barley and wheat, dates, gold and silver. What he's done is he's looked at the 6 types, and then what he's done is he has deducted from those 6 types these rulings to allow us to be able to differentiate things that are riba from things that are not riba. The scholars of today, such as the Lajnat al-Da'ima, they say the more correct opinion in the way that we do the qiyas, the way that we do the analogy between the 6 types of things that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned and the things that are riba is in another way. I'm just going to quickly end it on this. What they actually say, and this is for people to know, is they say when it comes to gold and silver, they say the reason or the illah, or the reasoning behind why it's considered to be from the asnaf of riba, why it's considered to be ribawi products, is because of its having value. It has innate value, just like currencies, just like dollars and things like that. And that's why dollars and pounds also are considered to be from products that contain riba in them. Is that clear? Now to go back to the other 4 types, they say it is al-tu'miyya ma'a al-kayl or al-tu'miyya ma'a al-wazn. So they add one thing on. They say for the other 4 types, it is that these are products that are eaten and are measured in volume or measured in weight. So this is the differentiation that they make. So the madhab, it doesn't differentiate between things that are eaten and things that aren't eaten. And that's why metals were also considered to be from what? From the products that are considered to be have riba in them in the madhab. But the correct opinion is what? No. It is only products that are eaten, that are processed by eating them, that are either weighed or measured in volume. And then or something that has innate value, such as currencies and gold and silver. وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Is there any questions?